Hello again, everybody. This is Derek, aka Mr. Everything, and I am coming back at you with some more Harn content. Okay, so in the first few videos we did character creation, where I showed you how to roll stats and generate the background. Then we did skills, picking the skills in our parent's profession and the character's profession. And in the third video, what I did was I picked some weapons and armor and assigned them to the character. And we discovered something. We discovered that if you don't have good, strong physical stats, then you will suffer. And because of encumbrance. Encumbrance is a serious thing in this game. Okay, and then the next step of character creation should be, and we're gonna glaze over it because that's not the topic of today's video. The topic of today's video is actually showing how the combat system works, how basically, and it's the basics, right? It's like how to move, how to attack, how to defend, how to cause damage, because in this game there is no armor classes and there are no hit points. There is only injuries that will cause penalties to your character, and then based on your physical characteristics, will you be able to resist those injuries from taking you out of the battle. But there's a lot more to it than that, and that's why we're having a whole video where I'm going to explain it. And again, remember that these videos have additional commentary, like what I'm doing right now, and I will interject throughout the entire video why certain things are the way they are, or how they work, and what choices I'm making and stuff like that, which will slow the video down. So don't use this video as a judge on how fast Harn combat is. But I do have something to say about the timing and things like that in Harn combat, comparing it to D&D 5th edition. Okay, so I'm using D&D as the baseline, and then I'm taking Harn, and because a lot of you viewers out there are familiar with D&D 5th edition, and I think it's a good center line to extrapolate how the Harn system is a little bit different than that, and then you'll get to see. And what we'll do then is I'll take a couple of characters that I created. I got Tim and Jim. They're both Knights of Caldor, and we'll pit them up against each other in a tournament style fight, and you'll get to see how the combat system works. Okay, so as part of the character generating system, I jumped the shark, right? Because we did the birth, appearance, physical, personality, stats, and all that stuff. We got the occupations, and this determined the automatic occupational, family, and optional skills. And then I determined the equipment and funds. But I did not do contacts, and I didn't do veteran. I'm not planning on doing veteran for my personal campaign, but that's still something you should know about as character creation. I think I talked about it a little bit, but I'm going to make sure that I go over it right now. Okay, contacts, friends and enemy. It's character page 18. And before starting play, every character generates a number of contacts. It's their character's age divided by 5. And so if your character is 20, he would have 4 contacts. Okay, for example, a 32-year-old character would have 6.4 or 6 contacts. They are in addition to any close relatives and current work associates. So if you're a knight with a squire, that squire would not be your contact. He's your squire. Okay. Um, and then contacts with an asterisk can be further identified with the role, and it talks about that kind of stuff over here. Okay. A contact's rank, such as officer or common soldier, is significant. Assume 10% chance of high official. But that's also up to the game master, depending on how you want to play out your game. It says GM discretion. Players should record their contacts. Okay. So here's the contacts, right? It's a contact table. You roll percentile. And you could have a first cousin, aunt, or uncle. You have distant relative, the church, militia or military contact. You have a slave or a serf, and then you roll down here to find out. Right? Oh, further identified with a role on the occupation table. So because it says it's ungilded, well, an ungilded what? And then you just go to the ungilded table in character creation, roll, and it'll tell you what kind of ungilded contact you have. Or guildsman, or a noble, maybe the neighboring noble is a friend of yours. You know, it's possible. And contacts would be people that will provide you with assistance, right? Getting help, right? So maybe, you know, like if your castle burns down, you might go to a neighboring noble's castle to request assistance, or maybe you know, for room and board, or if it's currently going on like a bandit raid or something, you might go there or send a messenger there to request assistance from one of your neighbors. Or it might be something, you know, who knows what it could be, right? Okay, so maybe it's a fisherman, and you are friends with him, and you want to know about a specific fish, like a fantasy fish you found that you've never seen before, or something, right? Okay, so there's relationships and loyalty. So some of these contacts might be your enemy, right? Some might be unfriendly, or an acquaintance, or a friend, or a close friend. And then maintaining your friendship, and then getting help. Right. So that's how you generate some contacts. Super easy, but not pertinent in today's video. All right, now veteran characters is also something that I touched on. I like this veteran character income chart, but I didn't really talk about being a veteran character. Characters don't always have to be generated as rookies, so it's up to the GM, really. So if the GM says, you guys are all kings, you're all 100 years old, and you're all on your deathbed, you're basically a veteran, right? Or he might say, you know, you're middle-aged, you've been around the block, and this is how this story starts, right? It's really up to the GM. But as a game master, I like my players to be fresh, new rookies that develop into veterans, right? Through gameplay and interactions with NPCs. And right here, a veteran character receives 3 option points per year of experience, right? So having Sir Tim and Sir Jim, because they're clones of each other, they had 7 years as a knight, right? So they would have received 21 option points, because you get 3 option points per year. And it says here that you can apply them to open skills. I'm in my campaign, I'm going to allow those option points to be spent on statistics as well. So um, through medicine or what's the word? What's the word? Not acupuncture, alchemy, right? You got alchemy, you got herbalists, you got medicine, you got physicians. So if someone has a poor eyesight, um, in the on his character sheet, and he wants to spend option points to improve his eyesight, I'm going to allow it, right? Because I want the characters to be um, better, right? By improving your eyesight, you theoretically could be improving a bunch of different skills, but you're only improving it by 1/3. Because remember, it takes 3 stats per skill base. So I think it's actually it's a wash, like it balances out. But if somebody is weak, I don't see why they couldn't have trained hard, lifted a lot of weights, and to become stronger. Or endurance. Maybe they do a lot of physical exercise, running around or, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to allow my players to spend their veteran options on their stats. Okay. But the way it works, and you can kind of see here, and I'm going to use the same numbers for stats. If you raise it by 1 point, it only costs you 1 of your option points. But if you raise it by 2 points, it's going to cost 3 points, where you could have raised 3 stats by 1 for the same cost as raising 1 by 2 points. Okay, and then if you decide to raise a stat by 3 because it's so low and you want to get it up there, it's going to cost 7 points. Like the characters that I'm using, Sir Tim and Sir Jim, would have 21 points. These characters that I'm creating are true veterans. They do have 7 years as a knight, but the players will not, and they're not going to have a full 21 points, and I'll let them know. So that's not important right now. Now there is an option based on if this character, remember, it doesn't necessarily have to be a player character. This could be an NPC that you're creating. Does he serve a sedentary life, always sitting around doing nothing? Well, then he only gets 2 per year. But if he's very active, he goes on a lot of campaigns, goes to a bunch of tournaments, stuff like that, maybe he's got 4 points. And this doesn't only apply to knights. This would apply to the jeweler in town. The jeweler, the longer he is a jeweler, the more skilled and more, you're gonna develop your skills over time. And because this game does not use character levels, so you don't have I'm a 7th level ranger. No, you don't have that. You just have skills that are better. And so in this game, you just raise the skills themselves, making the character a better character, right? A more experienced character. All right, so we're going to continue on with aging. Okay, so aging is a game master tool. So the game master secretly generates life expectancy, and then when the player gets close to his life expectancy, if you play that long, some campaigns go on for many years, and not only does the real time go for many years, each year that you play might be multiple years in the game. Like I played a game just recently where they ended the session in year 1, and then on the next week when they came back to play, it was year 6. So there was a 5-year gap of time there, and they had all told me, out of game, exactly what their characters were doing for those 5 years. But if you did that multiple times, and I don't see why you couldn't just run, like if you're You know, you just the game master says, well, nothing goes on in the next 20 years or whatever, and then you progress time. But if you reach that life expectancy, then the game master has to deal with that. Okay. Which it basically says you might have weight gain, you might have hearing loss, and all that other kind of stuff. So we'll just leave that alone. And then this system, right? I said I'm not making characters using the point buy system, but this is the point buy system where you get like 30 character points to spend. Everything starts at 8, right? And then you just spend. This is just an example, but you would spend points just like we just showed just a second ago, and then if it's not one of the 7 primary stats, if it's one of the secondary stats, then it's actually half price. So you can raise those a lot easier. And then there's birth attributes. You actually have to, if you're going to expand the system, to make them pay points for this stuff down here instead of rolling, then give them an extra 20 points is what it's saying. So you'll have a total of 50 points. And you can, at that time, you're choosing your birthday and your sun sign, and you're choosing your height, frame, weight, and comeliness instead of rolling. Not into that. Not going to do that. Okay, so let's go to combat. That's the topic of this video. We're past skills and equipment and all that stuff, which is actually kind of in combat. And then we'll have like a little encounter between the 2 knights, and you'll get a chance to see that. Scale. Okay. This is what I wanted to talk about D&D 5th edition. D&D 5th edition uses a 5 foot per square normal scale, right? So every square is 5 feet. They have like a grid system, and if you look in your Dungeon Master's Guide, it does say that that's an optional rule to use a grid, and you could just theater of the mind know where your characters are, and the DM can visualize where everybody's at and just tell you, hey, you're 10 feet away from the guy, or you're 15 feet away, or however. And then, but a lot of dungeon masters, like myself, will use a map and miniatures and show you exactly where you are. I find that that is way better than theater of the mind when it comes to visualizing what the room looks like, shape, size, where all the monsters are at, where you are at. It cuts down on the confusion of, oh, I thought I was on the other side. I didn't realize I was on this side. So it eliminates that. And a lot of game masters use that. And the 1 inch per square is pretty standard across the board. In Harn, it's no different, right? But 1 inch on the table is 5 feet, which most grid papers or grid maps or whatever use a 1 inch square anyway. But the big difference in Harn is you don't need to use a grid. You could just use a ruler, right? And move the guy 1 inch, it counts as 5 feet, and just move it along. But Harn is designed to be used on a hex grid, which I prefer. I've preferred for, I don't know, ever since I've played GURPS or the Fantasy Trip, Champions, any of those games all use hexes as the primary. And one of the reasons why is because you get a more accurate, or I shouldn't say accurate, you get more options to move. In a square system, right? If you only have 4 ways to move 5 feet. So up, down, left, and right. Because if you move diagonally, if the game master says moving diagonally is 5 feet, then he's basically giving you an extra 2.5 feet of movement, because it should be 7.5 feet to go diagonally. Now with a hex system, if every hex direction, and there's 6 of them, not 4, so you would be able to get 5 foot in all directions. It just I don't know, it just feels more like movement is controlled better. Now there's a downside. Most buildings in the Middle Ages were not set up for hexes, right? They were straight walls, crisscross, straight walls. And so squares work really good indoors. But I'm still using hexes because you might be in a large tavern room and you could use those hexes. But if they decide to start moving down a hallway that's only 5 feet wide, you're going to get hexes that do this number, possibly. And we're just going to ignore the hexes and just move them 5 foot at a time. So the hexes are really there only as a guide, right? Because now they say that you can play with miniatures without a grid, and to be considered engaged or adjacent to another person, your bases need to be touching, right? So that's just Wargaming 101. Okay, so now before we flip the page and we go into the combat round, what actually transpires, what you can do in combat, I want to make this very clear. I'm going to compare it to 5th edition, like I already said I was going to do. 5th edition, if you haven't played 5th edition, let me explain some basics of 5th edition. In a turn, you have movement, right? So when your initiative comes up and it's your turn to act, you can move a distance based on your race. You can act. There's an action that you can do, and that could be a variety of different things. Usually it's attack, but you could like cast a spell, or you could move again, right? So you could get a double move. Okay. And if you think about the distances you're moving, right? So you have normally a human would have 30 feet of movement. We'll call it 6 squares, or six movement. You would be able to move, any human could move like 12 squares if they didn't attack, right? They said, okay, I'm going to do a double move. They moved twice, boom. They also could, okay, let's back up. If you moved once, because everybody gets to move, period. That's just part of it. Everybody moves. If you move up to a creature and you attack, if you are a fighter, right, and you have this specific level, you get, or maybe not just a fighter, but a lot of classes can attack multiple times, 2, 3 times. And if you have the ability action surge, you could attack 2, 3 more times. And then you get a bonus action. If you have an ability that grants you a bonus action, not everybody does, but if you have a bonus action, you could also do the bonus action. And you have what's called a reaction. So if someone was to run past you, you could take a reaction to strike them. That's D&D. Okay, now Harn. Okay, I don't know how I'm gonna want to break this down to you. Remember, this is not scripted. This is just me sharing my knowledge with you. Harn addresses all of those things. In Harn, imagine I take that round from D&D and I break it down into its individual components. Movement, first attack, second attack, third attack, bonus action, reaction. Okay, in Harn, every one of those would be considered a round or a turn. So combat isn't, and I'm going to try to just quickly go over this. This is kind of a high thinking, looking down at the system from top down. In D&D, you run up to the monster, you attack, and it could be dead. Hypothetically, it could be dead. Or you run up, attack, like 15 times, and then its turn comes and it goes attack, and then you attack. Okay, and so that is, it's basic. It's like simplified way to do it. Where Harn works like you move up to the character, you attack him, he attacks you, you attack him, he attacks you, you attack, but he parries in such a way that he gets an extra turn. He attacks you, and now it's his turn, and he attacks you, and then you attack him, and maybe you block well, and then you get to attack, or you decide to counterattack, and you both attack at the same time. That's Harn. So what I'm trying to say is you get to attack the same way as D&D, but it's broken up, giving both sides an opportunity to parry and riposte and all that. You don't need special feats. There are no feats in this game. You don't need an extra feat to do that. Okay, so it just comes with, how do you want to tactically perform, and what the chart tells you is happens. Now I'll go into that here in just a moment. Okay, so let's go to the next page. We got a combat profile. Okay, so you have your endurance, your move, your dodge, your load. Dodge is agility times 5, which we already figured out. Your move is equal to your agility. Simple enough. And your endurance is your strength, stamina, and willpower. There is a new thing called condition, where it's basically strength, stamina, and will. But now, instead of it just being a stat, there's also a skill called condition, which, okay, so it's basically exactly the same thing. But endurance is the skill base. It's just the stats. It's not your enhanced skill or whatever. The move here, the move that you get based on equal to your agility, is how many hexes you get to move, or how many 5-foot steps. Okay. Load and encumbrance. Load is how much weight you are carrying. And your penalty for your load is based on the weight divided by your endurance. So if you have a higher endurance, which basically, remember, that's strength, stamina, and willpower. If you have a high strength, stamina, and will, average, then 100 pounds will affect someone with an average of 10 more than 100 pounds would affect somebody with a 12, because the division, right? So the higher your endurance is, the higher the division is. And so you can reduce your encumbrance. It basically means you can just carry a heavier load. And your stamina means you don't get winded when you carry that heavy load. And your will means you ignore the pain from carrying this extra weight. So that's why strength, stamina, and will goes into your endurance, which your load is divided by your endurance. Okay, so once you find out what the encumbrance penalty is, which let's say it's 100 pounds and you have a 10 endurance, 100 divided by 10 is 10. Okay, so that 10 is multiplied by 5. So you would have a minus 50 on your skills. It's a lot. Okay, and that's what was happening to my character, uh, the Knight of Kaldor. He doesn't have a good strength, and he doesn't have a good stamina, and he didn't have a good will. He had a 10, and so his average came out to 10. And then based on my weight that I was carrying, which was like 200 pounds or whatever it was, divide by 10, it's still a 20, and that means I'm like minus 100% on my, because I'm just carrying way too much weight. That's why I dropped some weight off. Okay, and then we have same thing with weapons. Weapons, and I think I've already gone over this in a previous video, but weapons have what's called the AML and the DML. So every weapon has an attack value and a defense value. Even a shield has an attack value and a defense value. A shield is going to have a higher defense value than an attack value, and a sword is going to have a higher attack value than a defense value, but they still have them. Because I don't know, I might want to hit you with my shield, or I might want to block with my sword. Okay, so when you attack, use the AML, which is your skill with the weapon plus the weapon's attack value. Okay, and then if you're defending with your weapon, then use the skill with that weapon plus its DML, which, like a kite shield, would get plus 25 defense, I think. Okay. And like maybe it's 20. I don't know. We'll look at it. But that's what the AML DML is. Okay, so basic principles in Harnmaster combat. No weapon limitations. Yes, your wizard can carry a sword. Your thief can carry a great sword. Your cleric can carry a spear. You know, there's none of that bullshit weapon limitations. Did you ever play D&D in the old days when your cleric couldn't have a puncture weapon? It could only have blunt weapons. I don't know. If I hit somebody with a ball and chain, he's gonna bleed. So I don't get the idea. I didn't understand that. And then why can't a wizard carry a sword? In the old days, they could only carry daggers and staffs. Mainly because what about Gandalf? He carried a broadsword. So what the hell? It probably was actually a bastard sword. Okay. No hit points. Facing. Okay. Some games, like the Fantasy Trip, have a front facing to your token or your character, and you can only use your shield to the front, and you can only attack people to your front. Where in Harn, you get rid of the whole facing thing. You face 360. It's assumed that you are looking around constantly, being aware of your surrounding. There's also, okay, we haven't really talked about it here, but there is also something called engagement. It might be later, so let's just jump into that. Okay, we already looked at these weapons. I'm just going to look right here at Kite Shield. It's 5% attack, 25% defense. Yeah, of course it's going to be better defense. But if I ever do want to attack with it, I still get a +5. Okay, moving down. We already looked at armor. We assigned armor. We put, over the body parts that they belonged in. And we put the proper armor protection values, assign them to each of those armor pieces. And so we got that. Yeah, compound layers. Basically, you just add all the layers on top of each other. It's easy math, right? But here was my problem, and this is uh, they kind of let you know. They say you must find a balance between protection being offered by the armor and the encumbrance penalty it brings. So if you might have this great armor value, but the encumbrance is really going to kill you, or you might lighten your load to get to be able to move better and to be able to strike better, but now you're not as protected. So you have to find a good balance in there. It says it's tempting to wear multiple layers of cloth or quilt, but this is highly encumbering and especially fatiguing on a hot day. A special penalty of 10 to 20 should be assessed for each extra layer of cloth or quilt. Okay, so that's giving the game master permission to penalize min maxers. So if you, I want to wear two gambesons, right? Well, one gambeson is okay. That's kind of expected, and that's what you would wear under a chain shirt or under some leather. But if you just want to wear two, then as a DM, I'm gonna apply a minus because you're just being a dick. Okay, moving on. Okay, so movement. Remember, movement equals your agility? Well, not really, because there's penalties for encumbrance. We already got that. And then you have multiple modes of movement. You have walking, which is half move. That's the way I've always done it. And then there's jog, which is basically just your standard move. It's assumed that you are moving with a quickness if you take a full move. And then there's run, which means you're running somewhere. You're using your double move. And then there's sprint, which is triple move. The way I've done it in past campaigns is if I let players move their own tokens around, and if they move their token half move, then I will allow like a passive perception for traps and people sneaking up on them and stuff like that. But if they do a jog or a full move as they're moving around, or if they just pick up their token and move it all the way across the map or whatever, I consider them not paying attention. They're just jogging or they're running. Okay. Now there is something called a stumble roll. So, like when you're moving and you're trying to move through a square that has maybe a log, or maybe it's got a dead body or something. If you're trying to move through that area, you make a stumble roll, and if you fail, you fall prone. Okay, engagement zones. That's what I wanted to talk about. Engagement zones, it's basically, if you've played board games or whatever, it's called a zone of control, which is every hex around your hex. Well, actually your hex and all the additional hexes is your engagement zone. When someone enters your engagement zone, they have to stop. They're done. So you got a guy that's 2 squares away, 2 hexes away, and he moves 1 square. So now he's in your engagement zone. His movement is over. Even if he's got a move of 12, it doesn't matter. He moves, he's in your engagement zone. Now, every turn that he gets after that, he can move 1 square. You can move 1 hex while in an engagement. Okay. If you have a long reach weapon, okay, long reach weapon. This is an optional rule. You see the little box there. Anything with a box lets you know that it's an optional rule. Long reach weapons are things like pikes, not a spear. I mean, it can reach about 5 feet and get an effective attack, right? But if you're trying to reach 10 feet plus the amount that you're holding, so almost 15 feet, that's not a spear, that's a pike. Okay, so if you have a long reach weapon, they have to stop when they enter your engagement zone. So they're still 2 hexes away from you when they have to stop. And now they can only move 1 square while within 2 squares of you. So that basically gives you an opportunity to kind of stop them. And then on their turn, of course, they're going to try to close with you. But you, if they're using a standard sword, you are not engaged with them. So you could back up. You could just run, right? And then if they charge after you, once they get within 2 squares of you, they have to stop. The only time they're going to get to engage you is if you decide to stop and fight, right? And so there's a little bit of a, if you're in a phalanx, of course, they're going to stop and then they're going to press and then they're going to attack you. But you basically get 1 free attack on them because they can't attack you from so far away. Okay. There is something, okay, unconscious characters don't exert any kind of engagement zone. That's pretty self-explanatory. And moving characters must halt upon entering an enemy engagement zone. And then they can only move 1 hex per turn when moving within such zones. So, have you ever seen a D&D game where you've got a monster and your character runs up and goes around the monster and then attacks? Yeah, that's fine in D&D. In this game, remember that that huge melee round is broken down into little bitty chunks. So you run up, then move, then move, and then move. And then you'll be behind, right? Okay. Where you don't just automatically shoot to the back. So prone characters. Prone characters only exert an engagement in their own hex. So I'm standing next to a prone character. I can attack him or I can move. I can move around him. I can do whatever I want because he does not exert his engagement zone onto me, right? But I, as a non-prone character, do exert a engagement zone on him. So he's stuck to moving only 1 square. He can stand and then move 1 square. That's fine. But yeah, we'll get into the actions here in just a second. All right. Now, as an option rule, they have something called a reaction zone. That's basically attack of opportunity kind of stuff. We're not going to worry about any of that. Okay, combat sequence. Okay, everybody will have an initiative. You have an initiative skill, actually, and you develop that skill in initiative so you can get a better initiative. Now, your encumbrance will also affect your initiative. So your initiative is pretty much, it's not a die roll. You don't roll a d20 and add your dexterity. No, you just have a set number, and it's always going to be that number. So if you have a 25 initiative and I have a 30 initiative, I will always have a 30 initiative. You will always have a 25 initiative. That means I will always go before you in the turn order. But now, if I'm wearing a bunch of weight, that brings my 30 down to a 15. Now you have the initiative. Okay. The character with the highest initiative has a first turn. When you roll initiative in this game, it doesn't, it just like all other Roll20 scenarios, it puts you on the initiative tracker, but it Doesn't roll, it just applies your initiative to the turn track. If you are tied, like if I got a 25, you got a 25, and we're tied, it doesn't default to your skill. It doesn't default to how much weight you're carrying or none of that. You just roll a die. Actually, that's not true. I'm sorry, I misspoke. If characters have the same initiative, ties are broken by characters with the higher SB, which is your skill bonus. If those are also the same, then you roll a die. Then you roll a die to tie. And it could be any die. You guys can roll 20s, a percentile die, a D1, or whatever. Okay. Action options. Okay, these are what you as a player or DM can announce what your character is going to do. Like, this is what I'm doing. In a turn, a character selects and executes one action. Not action, bonus action, reaction. Some options end the turn. Some trigger additional routines, such as melee attack. So, a melee attack is an action, but it's also part of other actions. And I'll show you that here in just a second. Rest. So an unengaged character, if he wants to do nothing in the turn, may, within reason, attend wounds, do minor weapon repairs, etc., and may defend normally. So that's like saying, what if you shoot your bow and the bowstring breaks? You can use the rest action to, which I wouldn't actually use the rest action, but you can use the rest action to like restring it or something like that. But you'll notice you did nothing else. You just did that one thing. Okay, and then we go to pass. This option is available to engaged characters who wish to forfeit their turn. I don't know why you would want to do that, but you can. There is a situation where you must pass, but you may defend normally if attacked. That's it. You just stand there. Okay. Move, and I'll talk about NPCs just standing there in just a second because that is a thing. Okay, free move. Unengaged characters may use this option. A free move is made at any speed up to double move, so you can't sprint. So you can double your move, and you may not enter an engagement zone. So if you move, you have to be aware that you can't get next to somebody. It's like a movement that's, you're free of engagement, a free move. You may not enter an engagement zone. And then it says, within reason, you can interact with yourself or pick up an item or something if you're doing a free move, which, like you run by and grab the sword up off the ground, or you've got a bastard sword and your shield out, and you realized you want to use your bastard sword two-handed. You could use that free move to like sling your shield and then re-equip your bastard sword two-handed. Yeah. Okay. Then there's something called engage and charge. That's where you're fighting. Okay, so engage, an unengaged character makes a half move. You don't get to move your full amount to engage an enemy, and then you may optionally conduct a melee attack. So the engage action is saying you're like moving up on somebody at half move. That's all it's saying. Charge is what everybody's going to be doing. An unengaged character can make a full move, not a run and not a sprint, but only a jog, a full move, and then must conduct a melee attack. So, yeah, which I don't know why you wouldn't, if you're planning on running up and hitting the guy anyway, why wouldn't you just say you're charging? Okay, there's no minus or anything. You just You just move a full move and attack. So if you have a 6 move, you would be able to move up to 6, engage the guy, stop when you enter his engagement zone, and attack him. Okay, disengage. An engaged character can move one hex, if now unengaged, can make a half move. If you are engaged with someone with a reach weapon, you wouldn't be able to get away, right? Because unless you're right at the edge of their engagement, then you could back out of his engagement and then dash, right? Or half move. Or if there's 2 opponents and you do a 1 hex move to the side where the other opponent is, well, now you're just engaged with that other guy, right? So you can't do a half move. So don't do any of that. Just do a standard move of 1 hex and attack, right? Okay. Then there's something called a rise. Well, guess what that means? That means you get up off the ground. When you stumble and fall prone, a rise option must be used to get up. The action is always successful, so you don't have to roll again, unless the character is forcibly being held down, or if you're suffering from a grievous wound, because it might be painful or agonizing to be able to get up if you have a grievous wound. In that case, I might require a agility or a strength test. Okay. Then there's something called a grope. No, it's a grope. You're trying to grope somebody. You're trying to reach in and grab. No, they're not. That's not what it means. Trying to grab their butt. No. What it means is you're using your hands to do something, right? It could be anything, right? It's not an attack. You can draw or change weapons, string a bow, dispatch an unconscious person, retrieve an item from the ground. Those are all grope actions. You notice how up here a free move said you could pick things up. Well, it's also within reason. I would allow someone to free move and pick something up as part of a grope action. I don't have a problem with that. Okay. A grope is automatically successful unless you're being held down, and he may require a dex or strength test to resolve the situation. Okay. So grope is basically if you have to do anything with your hands. Okay, we're not done. There's only a couple more. There's melee attack. But what that is basically going to be explained here in the next chapter is you're attacking your opponent with a melee weapon. Engaged characters can move 1 hex and then make a melee attack. Missile attack. Okay, that's like throwing something or shooting something. You have to have a missile weapon, which also includes anything that you can throw. Unprepared missile weapons, unstrung, packed, etc., must be prepared by means of a grope and cannot be used until the next turn. So if you have a bow that's not slung, you have to grope it, which is restring it, and then on the following turn, you're ready to go. Basically, you have to prepare the weapon. Not load the weapon. That's something different. Okay, so when you do a missile attack, you have to abide by these. These are all exactly the same, so don't be confused or don't let this overwhelm you. Basically, it's load and shoot, right? So that's what you would expect, right? You draw an arrow, you fire, psh, good deal. Now, let's say you already have an arrow ready to go. It's already loaded. You're waiting for somebody to come around the corner. You can shoot and then reload. So it doesn't matter which order the load and shoot is, you get to do both. If it's a bow or a blowgun, or a sling, or a throwable object like an axe, you can pull it out of your belt and throw it. But the only difference is the crossbow. You can load or fire. So basically, you can fire it and then reload, or you can fire it and then on the next turn reload, or on one turn you could load it and then the following turn fire it. So it's like every other turn you get to shoot it. Okay, grapple attack. It's an attempt to grab someone, hold him, and wrestle him. With one engaged opponent using unarmed combat as a skill, you may, if possible, move one hex before attempting a grapple. The defender may counter with the grapple, and then we go into the grapple. But basically, it's 3d6 plus your strength minus your physical penalty. And then you each roll on the combat chart, which we'll show you in a minute. And then if there's any result, if the character with the highest reroll ties is assumed to have thrown the other to the ground. Okay, if the grappler achieves any strike result, a hold on the opponent has been gained, meaning you grabbed them. And then you make the 3d6 plus strength minus physical physical penalty to throw him to the ground, basically. And if whoever has the highest roll, because you both roll, is assumed to have thrown the other to the ground and wins a tactical advantage. Okay, tactical advantage will be explained here in just a second, but basically it means you get a free turn. Esoteric attack. Okay, only clerics and wizards really need to worry about that. It's basically doing magic in the middle of a fight. It's the note here is using a magic in psionics or divine aid in combat situation is always governed by the GM. There's no real combat magic. No, there's no real like magic missile, fireball, if there is, because when we get into that section, if there is that, it's going to take multiple rounds to cast a spell, usually. Does it even mention something about that? Yeah. If an esoteric attack takes more than 10 seconds to prepare, it must be readied over several turns. They try not to equate melee rounds to a set amount of time, like 6 seconds, 10 seconds, or whatever. A melee round is a melee round. It is not a amount of time. But if you need, to be hand hold, or you need to judge like how much time it's going to take for that dam to break, just assume it's 10 seconds per melee round. And dropping items is free. That's what you would expect. And if you have a lanyard on a sword, a lot of knights that are on horseback will take a sword and they'll tie it to their wrist so that if they were to drop it or have it knocked out of their hands, it would just dangle from their hand and they could reach down, they could grab it and reassume without having to stop, get off their horse, climb down, grab their weapon. But if you wanted to throw a weapon down and it's tied to your wrist, you have to use the grope action. Before we actually get in and actually do an actual fight, which I promise I will do one tonight, and we're gonna have a combat between two knights, to resolution, and I'll show you how easy it is. Okay, melee attack sequence. Most of this doesn't have to be said, but if there's anything through your role playing and your verbose description of what you want to do and how you want to do it, there's certain topics you need to address. One of them is your attack declaration. Like, okay, I'm going to attack Gargan that's right in front of me, right? Or I'm going to attack this Gargan on my left, or whatever. Now, during that declaration of attack, you have to say what weapon you're going to use. No, you don't. Everybody knows you got your one weapon. You got your broadsword in your hand. You've got your mace, your axe, whatever. That's pretty straightforward. Everybody knows what you're going to use. You're going to use the weapon you have in your hand. But if you've got a sword and a shield, you might say, I'm going to hit him with my shield. For whatever reason, you would want to do that, but you could. So you declare the target and the weapon. Now, two optional things you can choose. Weapon aspect is I'm going to thrust, I'm going to hack, I'm going to bonk him over the head with the pommel. Basically, the aspect is it's going to be a bludgeoning attack, an edged attack, or a piercing attack. You need to kind of explain. If you don't explain which one it is, it'll always be the best one. So if you've got a weapon that does 2, 7, and 3, it's going to do the 7, which is slashing or edged. Okay, and the next thing is aiming zone. It's assumed you're just attacking, no penalty. But if you decide, for whatever reason, I want to aim low because I want to be tactically superior and, I want to sweep the leg or whatever, you can attack low, giving you a -10 to hit. Or you can decide to attack high. And if you attack high, you get a -10 to hit. There's 3 attack locations. There's the high area, the middle area, and the low area. If you attack the middle area, you get no penalty, no minus. But you can hit everything. The middle covers the head to toe, right? Where the high gets a minus to hit, but it only will hit high areas, the middle to the high, where the low is just the same way, but just the low areas. I'll show you on the chart when we get there. Okay, so you make your declaration. I'm going to attack the Gargan to my left. I'm using my broadsword. I'm going to use the edge, and I'm going to attack in the middle. You don't have to say all that. If you just say, I'm attacking the Gargan, everybody knows you're using your sword, everybody knows you're attacking in the middle, and everybody knows you're using the edge. You don't have to say that. You can just say, I'm attacking, and roll. If you fail to say, it's assumed that it's the best weapon damage and the mid location. Okay. And then the defense. So this is before you make any rolls. You just make your declaration. That's who I'm going to attack. The defender now has to choose if he's going to do one of 4 things. He's either going to block the attack with a shield, or he's going to counter strike, which means he's going to attack you at the same time. Remember, it's not even his turn, it's your turn. But he can say, I'm going to counter strike. Or he can dodge. He can use his agility to try not to be hit. Or he can just ignore it, just stand there, you can't hurt me, that kind of stuff. Okay, so once you both have made a declaration of how you're going to react, I'm going to attack, I'm going to defend. Now you both make rolls, right? Skill tests. And then based on your successes and failures, it cross-references on a table and tells you what the result is. And we'll get there. And then once that attack result is figured out, you resolve that attack result right then and there. And then if it's an injury, right, if one or both parties, because you might have did a counterattack and you both hit each other, and you generate an impact, you'll also have to generate a strike location. So where did I hit him? Did I hit him in the neck? Did I hit him in the hand? Did I hit him in the knee? Where did I hit him? So you make that percentile roll. It'll show you. Okay, so then you determine how much of the impact is, which is a die roll. You roll a number of dice equal to the strike impact, and then you add your weapon damage, and that gets you the impact of the strike, and then you compare that to the armor in that location. And if your strike is more than the armor, then you roll for an injury. Okay. So it talks about attack declaration right here. Well, I've already talked about that. It talks about defense declaration. We've already talked about that. A skill test. Okay, these are skill test modifiers. There's a few modifiers that the Game Master needs to know, and the most important one is outnumbered, or the only one that really needs to, it comes and goes. Okay, a character is outnumbered if excessively engaged by 2 or more opponents. I'm sorry, exclusively. That's not, I said excessively. Exclusively. So if it's a 2-on-2 fight, you're not exclusively engaged by 2 guys because you've got your ally with you. But if you're by yourself and you're engaged by 2 people, now you are exclusively engaged by 2 people, and you'll get a minus. Engaged by 2 or more opponents, and counting opponents for this purposes, prone enemies are excluded, as are enemies who are themselves engaged by other friendly characters. Let's talk about it. Outnumbered characters, it could be 100 to 1, may attack one opponent during their turn, but if they win a tactical advantage, may attack another outnumbered opponent. Okay, so basically, like I'm attacking Gargan 1, and or the Gargan that's on my left, I attack, we get a result, and my result is tactical advantage. I do not have to use it on the same Gargan I'm fighting. I could decide to strike the Gargan on my right. Now, outnumbered characters can defend against all attacks. Okay, so this Gargan's turn comes up, he attacks, I get to defend. This Gargan attacks, I get to defend. However, the defense is -10 for every enemy above 1. So if I've got 2 people around me, I'm at -10 defense. And if I've got 3 people around me, I'm at -20 to defense. Okay, because I'm outnumbered. Now, the outnumbering is ignored for all attacks, except counterattacks. So if it's my turn and I have 3 Gargans and I attack, there's no minus. Or if I have tactical advantage and I attack, there's no minus. But if Gargan 1 attacks me and I decide I'm going to use a counterattack, there is a minus. And then a prone character who's attacking gets a -20. No, I'm sorry. If you attack a prone character, you get a +20. That's what I meant. Okay. Aiming. Yeah, that's the up or down, right? Special penalty could be anything from the rain, slippery floor, whatever. And physical penalty is 99% of the time your encumbrance. Okay. Now, there is some special rules over here. One of them is called close mode. So let's say you're using a battle sword, which is a great sword. It's supposed to be swung in wide sweeps. If you're in a narrow hallway that's maybe only 5 feet wide, you might get a minus. But if you have a spear, you're probably not going to get the minus. A regular broadsword, probably not. Short sword, probably not. But definitely maybe a great sword is going to get a penalty while you're indoors. It's up to the GM to decide. Okay, so the rest of this all explains the charts that I'm getting ready to pull out and let you see. And I'm just going to go through it. We don't even need to be looking in the book because I'm just going to explain it to you. Okay, there's shock rolls. Okay, before we actually get into the melee, I gotta talk about shock because it's not actually on the chart, I don't think. But basically, you have endurance, right? You've already determined endurance. Um, if you take an injury, um, you have to roll a d6 for every point of injury. Uh, you have different classes of injuries, like severe and grievous and mortal and stuff like that. You have different classes, but each of those have a point value next to them. And that point values, those are all added up. But when you receive every wound, every time you're hit, you have to roll to see if you die, right? So if you get a scratch that is only a one injury, injury level 1, then you only roll 1d6 against your endurance. Well, you're not going to fail because maybe you've got a 10 endurance. There's no way you can fail. But let's say you were hit and you got an S2, right? Now you're rolling 2 dice. And if you roll higher than your endurance, you pass out, you buckle over, you fail, you're unconscious, right? So even your first hit, I could just come up and go, bam, one hit, do an S2. Now you got to roll 2 dice, and you could botch the roll and roll an 11 or a 12 and just pass out just from one hit. Or I could hit you once with a wound level 1, you automatically fail. I hit you a second time with another minor wound of another 1, but that second time you're hit, every time you're hit, you have to roll. And the dice you roll is equal to all of your wounds added up. So if you have 2 wounds at 1, you're still rolling 2 dice. If I rolled a 1, just scratched you, and then on the second attack I did a 2, now you're rolling 3 dice. And so it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse based on how many wounds you get. And after a while, you're just going to succumb to your wounds and you're going to pass out. I've got Sir Tim and Sir Jim right here, and they're both getting ready to attack. So let's go ahead and pull Sir Tim's character sheet up. Nope, not that. How do you use Roll20? I don't know. Go to his character sheet. Okay, and let's get Sir Jim up as well. And then we got our combat tables. Now the combat tables is pretty much going to be the game master, right? The players don't need to be looking at this. All they need to care about is the action that's going on, how they engage the enemy, and how they, the visuals. Okay, so we're only going to be doing melee attacks today. But here's the action options. I basically took the Game Master screen and put it up here for me. I can actually have this chart pulled up on my third monitor over here during the game as if it was a Game Master screen, so I don't have to have it on the screen here blocking the action. But because I'm showing you guys this, that's how we're going to do it. Okay, so let's get his character sheet actually up. Okay, first things first, right? These two guys right here, Sir Tim and Sir Jim, have to roll initiative, right? So we pull up a turn order like you normally would in Roll20. Sir Tim, make sure you select your token. That's very important. Then you come down to combat, and there is something right there, combat initiative. Boom. He has a 35. Let's look at Jim. Let's select Jim's token. Let's get to the combat. Boom. 35. Because these two are clones of each other, they basically have exactly the same stats. and the same weapon, the same armor, everything. Um, we're going to have to dice it off, right, to see who gets first. So Tim rolls, let's do a d20. Tim rolls a 6, and then Jim rolls a 17. So Jim has initiative. Okay. It it's going to be going back and forth, so it doesn't really matter. It would only matter if there was a lot of people. Okay, so okay, so what are we looking at? Sir Jim goes first. We look right here as combat stats. He's got a move of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I could get there with a move of 5. I could charge and get a melee attack, right? Because if I did just an engage, I can only move half speed. That's not really engaging. I could do a free move and run around him to maybe try to get behind him or something like that. But that's not important in a one-on-one, right? Because you have no facing and there's no additional people trying to get engaged with him. So I'm just going to do a charge, right? 25-foot movement. Sir Jim charges up and he's going to make an attack. Okay, so I'm going to attack with my bastard sword. And I'm not going to say anything else. I'm just going to say I'm attacking with my bastard sword. We already know that's going to be the middle, and that's going to be no minuses, right? Okay, so Tim here, hearing that Sir Jim is attacking with a bastard sword, decides he's going to block. So now we're doing a block versus an attack. So Sir Jim, bastard sword, right here. Actually, I'm going to roll here because he's only using it one-handed. Because they both have their shields out and they're using their bastard sword one-handed. So I'm going to roll right there. No additional modifiers because there's nobody engaging me. I'm not prone or blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I roll a marginal success. That's all that matters, is not what I roll, but the marginal success. And I already told you how we determine what a marginal success is. So now Tim is going to roll his kite shield, and he's going to roll his DML, right here is defense, no modifier, marginal failure. Okay, so then we go to our combat tables, and if you look up here, the defender was blocking, the attacker was attacking. I had a marginal success, which is MS, right? And he had a marginal failure, which is A1. Okay, it's a strike of 1. So that basically means I get to roll 1 die and add my edge value, which is 7. Okay, so there's no way to do that. So we're just going to roll 1 die, 1d6. Actually, let's put this down here. Okay, I rolled a 5, plus the damage of my bastard sword was 7. So what do we get? A 12? Okay. So I did 12. My strike is 12 damage, basically. You can look at it like 12 damage. Okay, so now we have to determine where I hit him. Okay, 98 in the mid zone. I hit him in the foot. Okay, so I hit Jim, hit Tim in the foot. We look over here at the foot, and my thing scroll. We look at edge, foot is 3 because of his armor. So that subtracts 3 from the 12 damage, right? So what are we at? 9? Okay. So effective impact is 9 or better. 9 or better on the foot gives me an S3. Okay, serious. It's either a fracture, a cut, or a stab. So it's a cut because remember I'm chopping. So I chopped his foot. It's S3. So we go to Tim, the player, would add an injury, and he could just say foot. He would make it a serious foot, and he would put a 3 there. Right? So that's a pretty serious thing. Now I'm going to make a shock roll. Oh, that's infected. Okay, never mind. Shock. Boom. Success. I rolled. Notice how it says that I rolled 3 dice, and my target was 13 because that's my endurance. I success. I don't die. I don't pass out. Okay. That's great. Now Jim's turn is over. We go to Tim. Tim decides, well, I've got friends around here, so I'm going to move 1 square. No, I'm not. Why bother? It's just 1-on-1. So I'm just going to attack this jabroni, right? So I come down here to my weapon. He's also using it one-handed. So he's going to strike back with... is he going to swing high? No, he's injured. He's just going to do a normal attack. Modifier? None. Okay. Now, marginal failure. Well, he's going to use his kite shield. He has marginal success. Okay, so we're looking at a failure versus a success. Nobody's gotten a critical yet, right? But you still have to check because every result combination has a result, right? Marginal success, no, marginal failure. Marginal failure versus marginal success is a DTA. Okay, defender has tactical advantage. What that means is he gets a free attack. So he's going to make a free attack. He's going to block. Also a marginal failure. And a critical failure. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Okay. So he now becomes the attacker with a marginal failure, but a critical failure. So see how easy that is? DF. Come over here. Defender fumble. Okay. So Sir Tim at this time, even though it's his turn, he is the defender. He's the one being attacked. He has to make a fumble roll, which is located right here. It's a failure. Okay. Okay, one additional thing I forgot was this little icon, this little diamond icon on that foot attack. Remember, he got attacked in the foot and he got an S3. He should have made a stumble roll at that time. But that's okay. Let's go find out what is a fumble. I think it means you drop your weapon, but I could be completely wrong. So, results. Here we go. Fumble. The attacker or defender or both make a fumble roll on the declared attacking or defending weapon. Okay, the defending weapon, I guess, would be the kite shield. Fumble grope. Dex test. Okay. A test to determine if an item is held in the hand or dropped, or the performance of a feat. Okay, so yeah, I dropped my shield. Wow. Okay, so he got a defensive uh, tactical advantage, swung back, knocked my shield out of my hand. You know, like they do in Hollywood, right? All right, and but that wasn't Sir Jim's turn. It was Tim's turn because he attacked and then got re-attacked, and so he's like, and then he critically fumbled, so critical failure. Yikes. Okay, that's the end of that. That's the end of Tim's turn. So then we go to Jim, who just attacked, right? But now it's his turn. Okay, now this is something also. Tactical advantage, you can only receive it once from a single opponent. So hypothetically, let's say he attacked me, I got the defensive tactical advantage, and I attacked him and received a tactical advantage from my attack. It would be wasted. I basically wouldn't get it. But if there's multiple opponents, he attacks me and I get a tactical advantage, and then he attacks me, I could now get another tactical advantage. I can get a tactical advantage versus each opponent, but only once. Okay, I thought I needed to bring that out. Okay, so Jim, feeling like he's doing pretty well. He's got him hurt on his foot is injured, and his shield is no longer in his hand. I'm going to just press on with my bastard sword. Now, Jim, now having his bastard sword in both hands because he doesn't have a shield, decides to go ahead and block. Because there's block, dodge, counter strike, or ignore. So he's going to block as well. All right, so bastard sword -10. Ooh, critical success. And bastard sword marginal failure. Okay. So we come up here to attacker is critical success, that's CS. And then marginal failure, which is MF. So he has the attacker deals 2 dice of damage. That's basically what it's saying. So he rolls two dice plus his 7 because he's using a bastard sword. That's 13, right? Okay, 13. Where did I hit him? Mid percentile. 3. Oh no. I hit him in the head, the skull. I hit him in the skull for 13 damage. No, that's not true. I did 13, but he's got armor. His skull armor is 18 because he's got a plate helmet and a coif. So my 13 does not exceed 18. So that means it's not even a 1. So it just glances off of his helmet. No damage. So Tim, feeling lucky because that helmet saved his life. That's the end of his turn because there was no tactical advantage, no craziness happening. So we go to Tim. Tim decides, I've got a 2-handed bastard sword. I'm just going to strike with my 2-handed bastard sword. And I am going to swing high. No, he's not. He's going to swing low. He's decided to swing low. Crazy, right? Okay, so Tim does not have to use the -10 for one-handed. He can use his full skill, but he's going to put a -10 here because he's swinging low. So I could have clicked that. It would have wound up being the same thing, but I just wanted to show you it is different. Oh no! Critical failure. No. And Sir Jim was, of course, going to use his kite shield. It's pretty standard to block. Marginal success. Okay. Tim's not having a good day. Tim is not having a good day. So, critical failure versus a marginal success is, guess what? A defensive tactical advantage. So the defender gets an immediate attack. So he's going to use his one-handed bastard sword. Boop, boop. Marginal failure. And he's going to use his bastard sword in a defensive way. Boop. Okay, marginal failure, marginal success. Marginal failure, marginal success is a DTA. Because he has not received a tactical advantage this turn, his turn, he's going to go ahead and make that attack. It's going back and forth. So he does a bastard sword. I'm just going to click this because it is the same thing as he is still going to swing low. You know what? No, he's not. He's just going to do a normal swing. He can't afford to take the -10. So he's going to go right here. Boop. And a boop. Golly, Tim, what is wrong with you? Okay, so Jim blocks with his shield and gets a marginal. Okay, critical failure, marginal success. Critical failure, marginal success is a DTA. But because he's already received a DTA, has he? Did he? I think so, right? Yeah. So he can't, it's basically wasted. The attack ends. Yeah, once they both get a tactical advantage, that round ends. So there was a round that nothing really happened. They were just banging on each other's weapons and shields. Okay, and then it goes to Jim's turn. So Jim, seeing that he's got Tim on the ropes, decides to attack him one-handed. I mean, it's obvious. Right? Don't really have to say much. Marginal success. Critical failure. Okay, this is not going to be good for our boy Tim. Okay, I can already see. Marginal success, critical failure, A2. Right? Okay. A2, rolling 2d6. I get a 9 plus 7. I'm at 16. But where did I hit him? 14. I hit him in the neck. Okay. How much armor do you have in the neck? 8. Right? And so that means 8 remaining, right? 9 and 7 is 16. Minus 8 is 8. Okay, so I got an 8. So I did not get all the way up to 9 plus, but I did get a 5 plus on the neck. That's another S2. So I would add neck S2. Okay. Whew. Now he's got to make a shock roll, which is going to be 5 dice to try to get under his endurance. Failure. Okay. So Tim passes out. And then if Jim was wanting to be vindictive, he could just dispose of him with a grope attack. Just, you're dead. Okay, now there's healing rate, how many days you've been convalescing, and did it become infected? But we're not going to worry about any of that. That'll be under probably a later video where I talk about wound recovery and medicine and physicians and stuff like that, because you're not seeing a whole lot of magical healing or anything like that. And uh, the wounds take at least one, okay, basically the weeks are 10 days. And so they count a 5-day period being half week. They consider it you get to roll on the wounds every 5-day period. So with a wound of 5 that this character has, the minimum convalescing, if all the rolls go well, might be 2.5, because you could double the healing rate, I think. It's going to be at least a week, not a long rest. Right? A week and a half, basically. 2 weeks, wait, 5, 2.5 periods, which would be, yeah, a week and a half. Okay. So looking at this combat table, I know this video is almost over. I just wanted to kind of give you an idea what other kind of results you might see. A BF is you both fumble. It's like the two swords hit each other and you both drop your weapons or something like that. Well, a fumble just means you roll to see if you drop your weapon. And then an AF is the attacker fumbles. DF is defender fumbles. And then you've got block, which just basically means if you were doing weapon damages, that's when you would roll weapon damage, but that's kind of an optional rule. Otherwise, you're just blocked. And then A means the attacker dealt the damage, and then there's defender tactical advantage. That's if you block. But like on a counterattack, if you decide to counterattack, you both roll your attack values for your weapons, and you might get an attacker doing damage, but you might also get defender doing damage, and then you might also get both doing damage. The weapons crisscross in midair, and boom, you hit each other. Now a dodge is, these are misses, and everything else is pretty much the same. And then if you ignore, you're just standing there going bonk, bonk, bonk. Okay. Okay, something I want to talk about on the if you get an arrow, little upside down triangle, which a few of these do, that's a potential amputation, right? The hand gets cut off at the elbow, gets your head cut off, But to get that, you have to get 17 past his armor. That's going to be very hard for like most people. All right, there's one last thing I wanted to talk about before I let you guys go. There's something called initiative testing and morale. The players don't have to make these rolls. I'm not going to make the players make this roll. I'm going to let the players decide if their characters are going to run away or if they're going to stay and fight or whatever. But because I'm a game master and I'm playing with a bunch of these characters that everybody has a different personality and motivation, and I couldn't possibly know the millions of people that I need to know, there is going to be an initiative test in combat. And that's what this page is letting us know. Initiative testing is intended for NPCs. Players are usually quite sensitive about their own survival. Okay, so basically, but these NPCs, it's usually unnecessary to test initiative in the first couple of rounds because most people, are super highly motivated and they think, oh, okay, we're gonna win this fight. But then after you fight a couple of rounds, an NPC would roll initiative. Remember that initiative skill that you have? Yeah, normally you're rolling 3 dice versus any skill. If it's extremely hard, you might roll a lot more dice. But normally you just roll 3 dice for any skill tests. And then if you fail, you panic or freeze, and if you have marginal failure, you're just cautious. And then if you have marginal success, you act normally. And if you have a critical success, you actually get pluses to your skills. There's also the results are right here. You could go berserk. You could be broken. And you could be cautious. Okay, and here and desperate. But this is where the cautious comes in. Earlier I mentioned something about the pass action. Cautious characters will not engage, and they have to choose pass if engaged, and cannot select the counter-strike defensive option if they're attacked. So a pass basically means you just stand there, right? And that's every turn before, like as a game master, when I'm running the game, each turn when an NPC's turn comes up, I should test their initiative to see if they act. So there might be turns where the orc just stands there. There might be turns where the dragon just is confused and doesn't exactly know what to do. But he also might go berserk, right? So, yeah, and then there's modifications. Normal, basically +0. But if you're in a bad situation, and that's the GM deciding what is considered a bad situation. What is a desperate situation? Or if they outnumber you by 100 to 1, I would say that would be an excellent situation. So they would get the +20 on there. But where's these pluses coming from? Oh, it's percentile. Never mind. Okay, right. Because your skill in initiative is a percentile. Let's pull one of these guys up. Sir Tim, right? Right, he's got a 60, so he's going to be rolling there, and you're going to get... All right, well, thank you for coming out and checking out this. This video might have gone on just a little bit extra long, but you can see how combat is actually fairly cinematic and exciting, and it basically lets you know, a lot of strange things can happen. You attack me, I attack back, I knock your shield out of the way, I hit you in the foot, you start bleeding, and then I hit you in the skull, and it bounces off your helmet, and then I hit you in the neck and cause a serious wound, and he passes out. Yeah, so Sir Jim is a much better fighter. He got away with scot-free, no damage at all. And Sir Tim is going to be convalescing for probably 2.5 weeks, maybe longer if it gets infected. All right, well, I'll let you guys go. And remember, if you're looking for miniatures or game materials or model kits, check out my eBay store at Wargaming in Miniature. All right, I'll catch you next time.